Meteorologist Matthew East here with you. This is the December 11th, Friday edition of the Carolina Weather Video here. And hey, 2 weeks from today, Christmas Day, it is approaching very, very quickly. Now, a lot to talk about here. Let's get right into it. This is a look at the temperature map from across the United States this morning at 5 a.m. and a lot of very, very cold, dry Arctic air. And again, I'll sort of draw you the single-digit line this morning. That extends from, again, near Chicago back into parts of northern Kansas and into the Rockies. Everyone single digits or colder north of that line. And there's, again, teens below zero for air temperatures in Minnesota and northern Wisconsin this morning. Here across our area, well down into the 20s for low temperatures this morning. Chilly start and a very dry air mass in place. These are our dew point temperatures, and we have everyone at least down into the single digits for dew points across the Piedmont of North Carolina, and close to, if not in the single digits, for the upstate and northeast Georgia. And as today unfolds, we could very well see some spots dipping below zero in terms of current dew points. So a very cold, dry Arctic air mass in place. Now let's get to the modeling. This is the 6C GFS, valid 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's going to be a dry day. We'll see some high clouds streaming in. And looks like high temperatures across the Piedmont of North Carolina today, low to at most mid-40s. Chilly day. Tonight we will plunge well down into the 20s again with that Arctic high pressure right overhead. Now let's go on out to tomorrow evening. This is 0Z Sunday, 7 o'clock in the evening, Saturday evening. So 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. That Arctic high pressure lifting northeast down into the western Atlantic Ocean. Clear indication though of cold air damming setting itself up here all the way from North Carolina down into northeastern Georgia. At the same time you have precip moving in. And the precip gets pretty heavy, if you believe the GFS here, from the upstate of South Carolina into northeast Georgia and spreading into the southern Piedmont through the evening hours Saturday evening. And that heavy precip begins to shift eastward overnight, and it leaves late Sunday morning, or at least by lunchtime or so. Now the key to this event and what type and duration of precip we see really is greatly dependent on the location of that high. Now let's go on out to, I'm going to show you most of the different modeling here. The high position here at 7 o'clock in the evening tomorrow, Saturday evening. This is the GFS. It has a 1036 millibar high centered just east of the Delmarva Peninsula. The NAM, very similar. European model, very similar. UK Met, a little farther eastward with it. And let's look here at the Canadian. It's the farthest west, and it's not much, but it is enough to make a difference. It is actually still sitting right there with Virginia Beach, somewhere around that area, southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula. And that's where that high pressure is centered on the Canadian. And it really is showing a very pronounced cold air damming configuration. Again this morning, let me take you through the Canadian, and let me say before I show you this that the Canadian is probably the most pronounced and the coldest with this wedge. So it's probably the most extreme model here. This is 7 o'clock in the evening on Saturday evening. This is 9 p.m. The precip really spreading on in during that time frame. The Canadian indicating ice from northeast Georgia and the upstate of South Carolina and into southwestern North Carolina. This is 11 p.m. and that ice still extending from the northeastern tip of Georgia through the upstate up close to Charlotte and under the Triad. Freezing rain, still the predominant precip type in that corridor on the Canadian model at 1 a.m. And that wedge holding firm at 3 a.m. on the Canadian. And beginning to erode away a bit, but still holding pretty firm at 5 a.m. Sunday morning. This is 7 a.m. Sunday morning. The precip getting much lighter, but still that wedge holding into the foothills. Looks like Charlotte and the Triad have gone over to rain on the Canadian at that point. And that wedge continues to erode away as the precip gradually pulls away and ends on Sunday morning there. All right, so again, that was the Canadian model. Let me show you a couple of the sounding time frames here. This is off of the GFS model, and this is valid for Charlotte at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Now again, this is just what the model is showing, so this sounding is only as good as the model is. And if you're not used to looking at this, the red line is the temperature, the green line is the dew point. And of course the air mass pretty saturated below about 10,000 feet. Notice here on the GFS a very significant layer of warm air all the way from about 2,000 feet off of the ground all the way up to 8,000 or 9,000 feet. That's a lot of warm air that these raindrops will be falling through, and then the surface temperature very close to freezing here at this point in time on the GFS. The Triad, this is Greensboro at the same time frame. Notice the warm layer, that's Charlotte, there's Greensboro. The warm layer, much less significant at that point in time up around the Triad area. So here's what I'm thinking right now. I think it looks like the consensus here is that high is going to be sliding out to sea. If that is the case, then we're not going to be able to maintain a northeasterly flow of winds through the entire event. So there's no fresh push of cool, dry air into that wedge. It's all really dependent on how dry the air mass is initially. As the rain falls in it, what we call wet bulb down to a certain temperature where the air mass saturates, and that's where we'll bottom out temperatures, and then they'll slowly rise due to the rain falling through that layer of warm air. Temperatures will slowly rise through the night tomorrow night if that high pressure does indeed slide offshore. So I'm thinking places like in northeast Georgia up through Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, and the Triad, I still think there's a pretty decent chance we see a period of freezing rain tomorrow evening into early parts of the overnight hours. And of course, the earlier the precip begins, it'll begin sooner in northeast Georgia and the upstate. The sooner the precip begins, the longer the duration of any type of freezing rain would be. So there'll be a period of freezing rain. I think the overall icing potential is somewhat limited here due to the high pushing out and the significant layer of warm air aloft in many spots. But there still could be enough to be a glazing on some trees or power lines, especially in the foothills of North Carolina, maybe as far as the Interstate 85 corridor down through the upstate and into northeast Georgia. I don't think this is a major event right now. I think it is more toward the minor side of things, but it's going to have to be closely watched and see exactly how the timing of this, exactly what the temperature and dew point is as the precip moves in. Now, another thing to watch is how warm we get tomorrow, how warm the high temperatures are on Saturday. That, of course, will play a role as to where the temperature settles when the rain begins to fall. So an interesting system. Let me quickly take you through a few more graphics here. Monday, milder and dry. Still looks like a rain-producing system moves through Tuesday, then another push of very significant cold air moves in Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday behind that. This is all the way out at the 22nd of December. Another big push of cold air. Christmas morning still looks cold, and still cold out to the 26th. So again, we may see a relaxation of the cold at some point as December wears on, but I think the cold is certainly going to surge back in toward the end of the month if we do see a relaxation of the cold. All right, so that's it for today's edition of the Carolina weather video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and God bless.